Right, shall I start by, can I nominate as chairman Councillor Mark Durham? Do I have a seconder? I'll second. Do we have any other proposals? Then I think Councillor Durham is elected as chair.
Thank you very much, everybody. And then in terms of a vice chairman of North West Committee, from the chair, I would like to nominate Councillor Mrs Thompson.
I'll second that.
Are there... Yes.
Sorry, when you said for the committee, are we doing just for tonight?
No,
or
this
ongoing?
is because this is as we would do at the statutory annual.
This would
right.
be, I believe, just for tonight.
Not according to Mr Quelch, but it doesn't make any difference. But
I understood it was just for tonight.
okay, well, just for tonight, that's fine. Yeah.
Sorry, it's not that I object either way.
No. I mean, that's absolutely fine. I did check.
Thank you.
It's a very good point. So, okay. Is it necessary for me to move?
Chairman, before you begin officially, may I have half a minute of the committee's time, please?
Oh, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. As of the outgoing chairman, we missed, unfortunately, the last meeting was cancelled, so I couldn't say at the end of the municipal year what I normally would, which is thank you very much to all the members for your contributions. Thank you to those not here, perhaps are watching, glued to YouTube. Thank you to all our officers, Mr Johnson, Ms Sadler, Mrs Herner. Thank you to our committee clerks, who've been Ms Verna Casey for some years, and now Mr Jones, who I can't see, so I suppose he's there. Thank you everyone for your contributions and all the members of the public who spoke. And thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Councillor Thompson. You did an excellent job in this position for a long time. And I'm sure everybody agrees with that. And I was going to say, welcome to...
Yes, we do, yes.
Welcome to our new members. But of course, we haven't got any new members. we lost some, we gained some, but they are not here. So thank you for that. Councillor Thompson. So, excuse my croaky voice. I picked up a cold. I didn't pick up anything worse last week, but as far as I know. And I did have to conduct a funeral this morning, so I just made that. I just made it through there. Hopefully I will do tonight as well. So good evening and welcome to this North West Planning Committee on the 24th of May 2024. My name is Councillor Mark Durham and I'm the chairman of this committee for this occasion. Members, we are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting you are giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put your hand up to indicate if you wish to speak. I'll then invite you at the appropriate time. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of the microphone, therefore can ask when invited you speak. Remember to turn on your microphone and turn it off when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible, and please avoid repetition of points previously made. Item 2, apologies for absence.
Good evening, Chair. We have received apologies from absence of Councillors Hughes, Siddle and Councillor Whitton also.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 3, minutes. It is recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on, he says, looking down at the date of the meeting, somebody help me before I get to it, 8th of March, thank you Councillor Stevens, are approved as a true and accurate record, members. Those were there. Thank you very much indeed. So did I have a proposer and a seconder for that? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Stevens. Thank you very much indeed. Item 4, declarations of interest to disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests or non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. Members, you are reminded that you are required to disclose any such interest as soon as you become aware, should the need arise during the meeting. Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you. I have to declare a pecuniary interest and therefore will leave the chamber for item on the agenda number 6, Spital Farm. The applicant farms the land immediately around that property. So.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Any other declarations of interest? There are none. Item 5, we get into the reports. So, who is dealing with this first one? Okay, thank you. Take it away.
Thank you, Chairman. So this application is a full application for 17 dwellings within the settlement boundary of Tollesbury. So the application is for all market dwellings, which will be made up of 2 one-bedroom properties, 6 two-bedroom properties, and 9 three-bedroom properties. It follows a previously refused application for 9 properties. One of the principal concerns with that application was the ineffective use of land and an inappropriate housing mix because they were large properties and a low density across the site. So this is the location plan. Historically, there was a bus depot within the site, which has now been demolished. And here we have the proposed site plan. So you can see we have semi-detached and link-attached properties fronting New Road with a block of 8 flats within the centre of the site, carports and parking, a bin store and cycle store to serve those properties, and then 1 detached and 2 pairs of semi-detached dwellings fronting First of All Road. So the layout follows the same principles of as the previously refused scheme, but there was no concerns in relation to the layout or the impact on the character and appearance of the area raised for that application. So here we have the proposed elevations for the properties that would front New Road and their floor plans. So these would be 2-bedroom properties. And roof plan just for reference. And here's the street scene, so you can see that the properties follow the visual cues of the terraces that exist in the street scene, and then the hip on the roof here follows the visual cues of the neighbouring properties, and then just a street scene below showing what was existing at the site previously. So this is the elevations of the blocks of flats, so they're within the access road within the site, and their floor plans and roof plan. And then here's the carport, bin and cycle store elevations and floor plans to serve those. So we move on to the properties that would front First of All Road. So this is plots 13 and 14, which are 3-bedroom properties. Plots 15 and 16, which are 3-bed semi-detached pairs. And then plot 17, which is a detached 3-bed. We have the street scene proposed for First of All Road. You can see the detached property reduces the bulk of the development as you move along the street scene to the single-storey property. So just for your reference, this is the previously refused scheme. So you can see it was a lot lower density with garden sizes well in excess of what we would require, and more spread of development across the site. And there's just the street scenes of the previous scheme. So we have some recent site photos. So this is the site here. You see the demolition works have taken place under what was a previously approved scheme in 2017. Just some views of the neighbouring area. So this is still New Road, and then this moves on to Hassler Road, which is the road. So the site would lie behind these properties here, so it wouldn't actually front onto Hassler Road at all. And then moving on to First of All Road, so these dwellings are opposite the site. And then here's the site within Thirstable Road and the existing neighbouring properties. So a members' update has been circulated. I hope that it followed, but the strike-through text was text to be removed, and the red is the additional text. It provides a correction of the wording in relation to the external lighting section of the report, but the main point is update to the 5-year housing land supply, which I know you're all aware of. We can now demonstrate 6.35 years worth of housing. However, the site is within the settlement boundary.
So just wanted to add at that point, the reason for the update was from when the report was originally published and to be then put on the agenda. That was before the meeting that took place last week, in which the official figure. So that's why with reports for these committees, we've had to make this amendment. So just so that members understand that.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Yeah, so we have the 5-year housing land supply, but this site is within the settlement boundary, and so regardless, the 5-year housing land supply figure is deemed sustainable and in principle would be supported under the LDP. The site has also previously developed land that will be brought back into a use rather than developing a greenfield site, and it's considered to provide a more appropriate use within a residential area because this isn't particularly appealing for an employment use. So it's sites like this that officers think that the council should be looking to support, as it will help to maintain the 5-year housing land supply, and the NPPF also recognises the importance of small and medium sites in that they can be brought forward quickly. The development provides an appropriate mix of housing and the design is sympathetic to the surrounding area. The developer is also willing to enter into a Section 106 agreement to secure the necessary financial contributions towards healthcare and RAMS. So I guess the negative of the scheme is that there would be no affordable housing provided, but we have had an independent viability assessment undertaken of the applicant's viability assessment, and it was deemed that the site wouldn't be viable for affordable housing. So in weighing the benefits against that harm, the officers are recommending the application for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hannah. Have we got any public speakers? No speakers on this?
No public speakers on this one, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Members? Ooh, everybody's got their hands up. I had Councillor Morley, then Councillor White, Councillor Stevens, Councillor Morgan and Thompson. Okay. Well, in the order I saw you, Councillor Morley first.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Well, from what we were discussing today, I was surprised that there aren't any affordable housing. We're pretty low on that anyway at the moment, and trying to meet that criteria, they think it's going to get steadily worse. Also, which is the proposed or the preferred access route to here? Because I know when you go down Station Road, it's the parking's awful there. Is there like a way, preferred route through Thirstable Road? I can't remember if that's blocked off. It looks like there's a line there, but that was already those two things. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the affordable housing, because the site is previously developed land and there'll be works required such as remediation, it has been found that it isn't viable, but it will also still contribute to the 5-year housing land supply in the sense of bringing forward market dwellings. The density of the scheme is probably the greatest it could be in achieving an effective use of land, but in doing that still doesn't make it viable to provide affordable housing, unfortunately. But this site is within the settlement boundary and is sustainable. And then in terms of the access road, so the access to the flats will be off of New Road, and so yeah, it will be up through Station Road, yeah, either through Thirstable or New Road. Thank you.
Can I ask, you mentioned it was an independent viability assessment. Can you just explain that, please?
So the applicants submit a viability assessment with the application, and then we go out to a viability consultant to assess that for us. So it's independent of the council, but also independent of the applicant.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor White.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I mean, not providing affordable housing, it goes against all of our policies. And if the site's not viable, the site's not viable. I just think they should find an alternative use for it. I don't see why we're supporting it if it's against all of our policies. I've also got a query with the development line. I think that the development's contrived with the development in the middle. It doesn't match the linear design of the houses front and back. They've all got long gardens and they don't have houses in the middle. So I think that'll cause overlooking to the houses either side. I don't think there's going to be a limit with parking. I don't know if it meets the parking. I presume it does meet the parking standards. But can you show me where both sides, I think one side has got, it meets the building line. Is the other side slightly further? Oh no, it is about the same. It's a little bit further, yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the overlooking front and back I don't think is acceptable, particularly as we don't have the benefit of the affordable housing. And I think if it's an unviable site, it's an unviable site. So for me, I think that is a material consideration. And I think the developers should come back with something where we could provide affordable housing. We're low on, we haven't met, according to the meeting today, we haven't met our current where we should be on affordable housing. So to allow 17 more houses and not a single affordable, it's not our fault if it's not viable. Thank you.
Mrs. Hannah, yeah.
Thank you. In terms of the alternative use, so the site was an employment site, but there wasn't actually any employees on the site, just as it was used as a bus depot. This was something that was accepted under the 2017 application. So could be seen unreasonable for us to alter that stance at this stage. In terms of the viability, the affordable housing policy does allow for us to accept no provision of affordable housing as long as it's justified. And I'd say with this application, there's been clear justification as to why it would be. The NPP also requires us to place substantial benefit on bringing previously developed land back into use and not using greenfield land, which I think is a significant benefit. And then I think the other point was in relation to parking. Yes, it does meet the requirements. And then overlooking, we've got sufficient back-to-back distances of 25 metres or over, which is required by the design guide. So we didn't have any concerns in respect of overlooking. Thank you.
Councillor Stevens, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm the ward member for Tollesbury, so I know the site extremely well, obviously. Just to pick up on one point that's already been raised about the access, on the Thirstable Road side, Thirstable Road towards the west then becomes a private unmade road. So if we do grant approval for this, I'd like to see some condition about the site access during construction, that it doesn't go through that private road, because it's just the residents there that will have to pay to keep resurfacing that road. So if we could bear that in mind. But I'm jumping ahead a bit really, because I mean, in many ways, this ticks all the boxes, doesn't it? It makes use of previously developed land as a brownfield site. It's in the defined settlement boundary of Tollesbury. It's surrounded by existing residential properties. The scale, the design, the appearance don't seem to provide any or pose any particular harm. And it would contribute to our 5-year housing land supply. I've got a whole list of pros down here. I could read them all out. But I'm bitterly disappointed to find that there's no affordable housing proposed. And they're not even proposing to give £1,000 or anything. And I just find that, it's not just disappointment, I find it unbelievable that it's zero. There's not any contribution whatsoever. And I don't accept that. There must be something they can do to be able to contribute something to the society that they're going to profit from. They shouldn't obviously have paid so much as they did. And maybe they need to clear the site and have a good close look at it and then come back to the table with some better designs that reflect what they can afford to build. And that for me is a real sticking block. Thank you.
Was the application of commuted sums not brought into the equation for the affordable housing?
It was found that it wasn't viable at all to provide any contribution. There is, I appreciate not affordable housing, but there's contributions for RAMS and healthcare, which are also factored in.
I did notice the parish council's comment that they wanted Section 106 money for Waterworks Road, which I'm assuming is the road you were talking about, Councillor Stevens. I'm not sure that we can use 106 money for a private road, but Councillor Stevens makes a very valid point that would need to be off limits if the committee are minded to approve that Waterworks Road is protected because it is a frequent well, it is a private road. So anyway, we can
It's outside the development zone.
okay, right. Well,
There would, I'm trying to find the condition number, I probably just can't find it at the moment, but I'm sure there's a construction management plan that's conditioned those to ensure the routes for traffic.
okay. So we can on that. Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm just thinking how wonderful it is to be able to consider planning applications without the threat of a tilted balance hanging over us. It's quite refreshing. However, which means I think we can afford to be fairly particular in our decision as to whether we go ahead with this situation. And I reiterate the points made previously about affordable housing, particularly as the majority of the dwellings seem to be 1 and 2 bedroom. I'm just wondering, is there a perceived demand for dwellings of that kind which isn't part of an affordable housing scheme? I'm not quite sure whether that will work. I have also picked up the terms that looking at the medical, that there's been a comment made that the surgery arrangements in Tollesbury are already sort of under pressure, and that this is only going to make that worse. And I just wanted to check the reason. I know the previous application was refused, and this one has now been passed. Was that purely based upon the density? Is that what has tilted it in favour?
I'll start with your last question first, if that's okay. So yeah, essentially, if I show you the last application. Oh, you can see so the houses were 2 and 3 beds, I believe, but they had large dressing rooms and factors like that at first floor. So on paper, they actually appeared as 4-bedroom dwellings and could have been used that way. So the housing mix wasn't in accordance with what we would be requiring and what the needs of the district are. And also the amount of land here, it was at such a low density, the gardens were well in excess of what would be required. And so there wasn't an effective use of land and using the land in the best possible way. So there were other reasons for refusal, but they were the main principal concerns, I would say. In terms of the housing mix of this application, so it's a mix of 1s, 2s and 3 beds. It's pretty much in accordance with the local housing needs assessment. There's just, I think it's 2% more than what the 3 beds and perhaps 3% more than 2 beds, but I think that happens where it's 100% market. You're going to have that slight skew because you haven't got the affordable, because the splits a mix between affordable and market, but we're talking 2 or 3%, so I'd say a good mix and what the district needs. And then the health contribution, so the response is that it's at capacity at the moment, and that's the money that they would need to be able to expand the surgery, I believe. So the money being offered as part of the Section 106 would mitigate against that harm.
Councillor Mrs Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'll spare the repetition of the affordable, except to say, it's such a shame. It really sticks in the craw, but how do you argue with an independent financial viability assessment? Very difficult. And I dare say there is contamination on the site, but leaky old buses, I remember those buses. As regards health service and so on, it's within the settlement boundary. There's, so the principle of developments are given. We can't say it's got to be turned into green space or something. I'm sorry to say, I think it is what it is. But presumably the residents of Waterworks Road could close it themselves if they felt so.
No, they can't. We've been there and got the t-shirts, Councillor.
Right.
Councillor Mrs
I'll go away.
Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Stevens and I have, been sorting that out for a long time. Councillor Stevens, you can come back.
Thank you. Yes, it's half a question, really. So this viability assessment looks at this proposal, yeah, and finds that it's not viable to provide affordable housing based on this proposal. But I maintain that if the developer came back with a different proposal, perhaps using some cheaper materials or a different design in some way, that they could make it affordable. So I don't think it's just, oh, well, our policy says this, so therefore we've got to let it through, because they've only done the assessment of this design. So I think we need to bear that in mind, and I remain bitterly disappointed and rather cynical about this viability assessment. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, yeah.
You go.
Okay,
Yeah, no,
sorry.
I just wanted
Sorry,
to add, this is the application that we have in front of us. The viability assessment has been applied to this application. It's a valid assessment, and it has been counter-assessed by independent financial assessors. That's a pretty much established protocol in terms of viability assessments in planning. There's been significant numbers of appeals on that. If the viability assessment satisfies the scheme, if the scheme is satisfactory in planning terms in any other way, we can't then say to them, because we want whatever the contribution might be, yeah, affordable housing, then to mitigate the lack of viability, I don't know, reduce the number of housing or whatever the measure might be. It's really based on the application itself. So it'd be difficult if we were to follow that line of thinking. They propose a development which, because of its scale and the extent of remediation that's required, is what makes it unviable. That'd be a difficult line in which to defend on appeal. Thank you, Chairman.
Did you have anything to add, Mrs. Anna?
Yeah, it was just in relation to the materials that all of that is assessed as part of the independent review, and it was found that reasonable costs had been attributed to the materials. So it wasn't that, you know, really expensive materials being used or anything like that. And I think we'd want to be cautious of diluting the design in any way.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here, because looking at this scheme, there are a number of one-bedroom accommodation, and I can recall when we were discussing, I think it was the South Malden Garden Suburb, Councillor White's nodding, I think you were, that nobody wants one-bedroom properties because even somebody living alone generally has somebody visiting, and there was actually no call for one-bedroom properties. The other thing that I'm slightly concerned about is what is the difference between a one or even a two-bedroom property that is market or affordable? Does it mean that the affordable is built to a poorer standard, in which case I don't think that that's very acceptable. What we are saying is that affordable housing is of a poorer construction, whether that's in terms of building materials, insulation, etc., etc., and I don't think that's entirely reasonable. I don't know if you can answer that.
In respect of the one beds, the mix needs to be in accordance with the local housing needs assessment. So that's where those have come from, and that's an independent study that shows that is what the district needs. The affordable housing, so it isn't that they're made differently. They should now all be made exactly the same, and you wouldn't know in the street scene which house was affordable, which isn't. I think it's to do with the profit that the developer can make on an affordable unit compared to a market unit, and in relation to the purchase price of the site and the remediation costs and all of those factors. So it's more about the resale price rather than the construction cost being different between the two types of units.
So it's developer profit, in basically.
Yeah,
because you have fixed costs, don't you? You have the fixed cost, which is the land construction costs, and then the variable is the developer's profit.
Yes, so the assumption is 20%.
How very interesting.
Viability.
Just to add to that, it is accepted that the developer is to make a profit.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not decrying a profit. That's what the world spins on. So, but it's reasonableness. So, members, we haven't got a proposal on the table yet. Councillor White, yes, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to propose that we reject the application because the housing mix doesn't meet the SHMA and the actual housing demand in the district. I'm pretty sure, because I'm sure you're right that they don't want one-bedroom flats.
It's certainly something that was argued in relate. I don't know. We need to be very careful about referencing a document if that's not what it says. But it's very. That was certainly a topic of conversation.
Am I correct in my findings of the SHMA? I might come back.
I think.
So it's the local housing needs assessment. So if I can get to the point of the report. So our greatest need is for 2 and 3 beds, but it sets out a percentage for each. So I think it's up to 10% of 1-bedroom properties. I've got it here. So up to 10% of 1 beds, 25 to 35% of the site as 2-bedroom properties, and 40 to 50% as 3 bedrooms. And then, not relevant to this, but 10% for 4 beds. So this site would provide 12% 1 beds, 35% 2 beds, and 53% 3 beds. So yeah, it's only a 2% over provision on the 1 beds.
Okay, so yeah, it's broadly whether there is market. It's whether they can sell them. That's the thing, of course, which is not something. So you were almost making a proposal there, Councillor White, but.
Yeah, I want to make a proposal, but I can't think of a reason other than the density.
Well,
I think the other reason for proposal refusal is that the density does not match the existing street scene of predominantly detached dwelling houses. And bearing in mind that we have a 5-year land supply, I think that the harm of the development and the design outweigh any benefits from allowing the development.
I'm tending to think we're going to need more robust material considerations for a valid refusal. Councillor Morgan, you're the expert here.
Certainly not. All I was going to say, I mean, there's a lot that we don't like about this site, but I'm struggling to think of a valid reason with a material consideration under planning rules to refuse it. So I move that we go with the officer's recommendation and approve.
So that is the first formal proposal, and that seconded is by Councillor Mrs. Thompson. So we do have a proposal on the table to approve in line with officer's recommendations. Can we have a show of hands, please, for approval? That's 4, and those against? 1 abstaining. Councillor Mrs. Stephen, I take your nod as indication. So that permission is granted. Subject to the 106. And if we can do anything, I think Waterworks Road really needs looking at, if that's possible, please, to save my postbag and Councillor Stephen's postbag. Okay, thank you, members. Okay, the next item. Are we shuffling mice? Are we? Okay, that's good. That's fine. Oh, yes, yes. Your interest is duly noted. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. We may well do so, yes, I'm sure we will find you. Okay, so the next item is Spital Farm Station Road, Tolleshunt, Darcy. I think you're going to take us through this, aren't you? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal seeks to form 2 dwellings along with associated amenity space and parking facilities on 2 plots within the site. Plot 1A is a 4-bedroom, 2-storey dwelling with a gross internal floor area of 220 square metres, and plot 2A is a 3-bedroom, 2-storey dwelling with a gross internal floor area of 147 metres squared. The current application follows a previously refused application, which is currently at appeal, and section 3.1.12 of the officer report sets out the changes from the previous scheme to the current scheme, which the applicant seeks to address within this application. So we have the location plan, the block plan showing the two proposed plots. These are the existing elevations of the barn that's there. These are the existing floor plans. I think this is right. Oops, sorry. These are the proposed elevations. These are the proposed floor plans, the proposed roof plan, and these are the site photos. I think I'm missing a couple of extras. Might be missing a couple of slides within that. Can you escape out? Sorry. I might need to...
So there were some additional slides just to show comparison between the existing, the scheme currently at appeal, and the current application, just to show the changes and the scale between the three forms of the site.
I think I can find the correct presentation, which will probably be more helpful. It's all right. It's fine. If we could just reverse a little bit. These are the proposed elevations of the submitted scheme and the proposed roof plans. And these are the elevations and the roof plan of the previously refused application, which is currently being heard at appeal, where you can see some of the significant changes with regards to the fenestration patterns, the admission of some dormers, and a reduction in the size and the height. This is the existing floor plans, the proposed floor plans, and that was it. The previously refused application had a floor space of 430 metres squared, whereas the current scheme will total 367 metres squared for both the dwellings combined. An approved change of use for prior approval application, which matches the existing elevations, had a floor space which is, as it is existing, of 381 metres squared. In officer's view, and shown within the slides, there's very minimal difference from within the street scene of the proposed applications. However, it's the.
Can we just compare the two?
Oh, sorry. Did you? Yes, sorry. So this is the existing as was approved under the change of use prior approval application and has currently stands on site. The proposed application.
Just hold it there just for a second. Yeah. And if we can just draw out the differences
Yes.
of what you can see between that elevation and the one currently at appeal.
Okay, so this is the current appeal. So on the application that's currently at appeal, there are some larger glazed areas to the south elevation. These have been reduced within the current application. There's been a reduction in the height of this section of the east elevation. In the current application, it would match the height going across apart from the pitch. And within the roof plan, the previous application proposed 3 dormers within the roof. These have been omitted from this scheme, with just roof lights with the top.
Well, Hayley, I think the fundamental difference that the office is drawing out is that visually from the street scene there seems to be very little difference between the scheme that officers refuse and is currently at appeal and the application that we have in front of us. And this, in officer's view, justifies a similar recommendation to refuse the application for the said reasons as in section 8 of the report.
Okay, thank you. Have we got any public speakers on this? Yes, we have. Who do we have?
We have Mr. Ian O'Hanlon, Chair.
Mr. O'Hanlon, do you want to find a seat with a microphone? Please take a seat. There's a button on the with a little face.
Like that?
Yeah, and you have 2 minutes.
Before it starts, would it be possible to have drawing PO14 up, which is the submitted drawing showing the comparison between the two?
I'm sure we can do that.
Sorry, is it, do you mean there's a drawing with the two elevations on one drawing?
Yes.
Not sure if that's in the presentation.
think that that's been added
We
to
can
the
only compare
presentation of
the two on separate slides.
I think members, they've had a chance to see them both, I think.
Yeah, it is a street scene drawing, one drawing that shows directly comparing the two existing and proposed. Disappointing not to have that.
Well, okay, I'm sorry, if it's not in the pack, we can't call it up. So you have 2 minutes from when you start to speak, and we are pretty rigid on the 2 minutes. So,
Sorry, just before we start that, if you do wish for the officer to move between the two, if that helps to illustrate your points, I think we can accommodate that. I'll just put that out to you in case that's
yeah, I
something
mean,
you'd
if
like to take
you might as
back.
well just toggle back and forth.
I'll
Thank
do my
you.
best to do it at the right time.
Okay, well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. A key consideration that the committee must take into account is in determining this application is the recognised fallback position. It's not a matter of planning judgment, but a matter of law which must be taken into account and applied correctly, because the fallback position is this has Class Q approval for change of use of the agricultural barn at the application site for 2 dwellings. In short, when considering the planning merits of any development, it's necessary to take into account what could happen realistically if planning is refused. One then compares the proposed development to that fallback position when assessing any potential harm that may be identified. The officer's report seeks to reduce the weight to be given to the fallback position on the basis that the applicant has not put forward an argument as to why the conversion is not being brought forward. Firstly, that's not a legal test, but secondly, the applicant's clear intention is to deliver a Class Q scheme should all other proposals for the development of the application site be turned down. The leading court of appeal case for the fallback position, Mansell versus Tonbridge and Malling Borough Council, in that case, there have been prior discussions between the council and the planning consultant acting for the site owners. It was crystal clear from the contact that the owners were intending one way or another to develop the site. Alternative proposals had been advanced seeking the council's likely reaction to planning applications, and an application for prior approval, consent under Class Q, had not been submitted. It was, in the judge's view, wholly unrealistic to imagine that where all such proposals to be turned down, the owner of the site would not take advantage of the permitted developments provided for by the Class Q to the fullest possible extent.
I'm going to stop you there, I'm afraid. That's the 2 minutes.
Right, that was quick.
2 minutes is 2 minutes, I'm afraid.
Fair
So, yeah, we have to be even-handed with everybody, so 2 minutes is literally 2 minutes. Were there any other speakers? No. Members. Councillor Morgan, then Councillor White.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was interested in the point the speaker made there about the previous Class Q. Is this the application to convert the existing barn? That's planning reference 21000619 Cooper. That's the one? So that is still in place?
That is, if you just check what I'm saying, I think that's it, yeah, that's still in place. Yeah, so they still have that as a fallback position.
And do you know when the appeal is going to be heard?
It's currently at appeal.
Right, thank you.
Currently with pins,
With
goodness
yes.
knows when.
I can't recall how long.
Awaiting a hearing date.
Oh, it's going to be a hearing, is
I
it?
believe so.
It will be a hearing.
It's a hearing.
Okay.
And I can imagine that at the hearing, a number of these points will be obviously subject to the outcome of today's meeting. Will be the subject of these discussions, because the legal points are the ones that always come up in these cases.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, for me, I actually think because this has Class Q approval, I know there's problems with Class Q if you don't complete them in time. There can be all sorts of issues, and we had the ones in Althorn, which ended up being pulled down. But for me, under policy D2, part 4 is the reuse of existing and redundant buildings, and this, for me, hits that nail right on the head. I also think that it could be H5, which would be a rural exception scheme. For me, it already has planning permission, and I've looked through, and the refusal was actually done on a delegated, not under the area planning committee. And I think as rural councillors, we have a very high knowledge of the local sites. So for me, if there's not an alternative, I'd be happy to propose this application for approval because it meets D2, part 4, reuse of existing buildings. Thank you.
Seconded.
Sorry, do you say? Councillor Morgan, second. And Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. To me, the changes are just, well, rearranging the deck chairs. At the end of the day, there's a note in there about concern as to access onto the highway, but the two main reasons for refusal: the proposed development by reason of its location would be disconnected from services and facilities and would provide poor quality and limited access to public transport. So there's that whole access thing. And the introduction of 2 residential dwellings and associated paraphernalia on the site would represent an inappropriate urbanisation of the site. I mean, sorry, everyone can read that, and I just can't see any reason to disagree with what the officers have found. Thank you.
Who's going to pay? Anybody? Mr.
I just wanted to, Ms. Honer can make the point in terms of the policies.
Yeah, sorry.
By the councillor.
Yeah, I'm not intimate with the case, but I understand these are rebuilds. What are they? The buildings. But in terms of policy H5, rural exception scheme, that's for schemes that are 100% affordable. Which, as I understand, these aren't affordable houses, so that wouldn't apply in this instance.
And D2.
D2 relates to reuse, not rebuild. This is a demolition and a rebuild.
Right.
So that policy equally is not relevant.
But the buildings are still there, so technically it's developed, although it wouldn't be brownfield. Although it wouldn't be brownfield, it is previously developed land, and I'm not sure what the policy number for previously developed land is, but I'm just flicking through them now.
That's not the question for us to ask or answer for this application.
Any other member? Sorry, Mr.
Yeah,
Johnson,
just wanted to make the point in terms of Class Q. Class Q is a permitted development right, subject to criteria. It's quite strict criteria. It will allow for the reuse of agricultural buildings, buildings in the countryside of this nature, where there are essentially minimal changes. It is a reuse of existing structures for a new use that will maintain these buildings. It's not. I mean, just for example, in submitting an application for Class Q, one has to demonstrate that the building itself, the fabric, can maintain redevelopment in term or refurbishment as the building itself. It's not demolition. If the building was subject to substantial demolition, it would fail the Class Q test amongst the other tests that one would apply. This is a clear case of, as a full application, a demolition and a rebuild. So the comparison with Class Q is actually not a fair one, and it's not a relevant one in this particular case. That is part of the reason for officers not supporting this application, because it fails in terms of the legislation, but also in terms of the local plan policies. Thank you, Chairman.
Right. Okay. So, in a nutshell, the extant permission is a Class Q, is to reuse the existing buildings. The application in front of us and the one subject to appeal is to demolish and build new buildings. Yeah, I do know about Class Q because that's what the Home Office are relying on to put the Wethersfield, to put the asylum seekers on at Wethersfield. That's what they are using for that argument. Do you still wish to pursue your proposal, Councillor White, given that those policies are not really applicable?
Well, I'll just use a policy D1 that I think it's a design that fits in with the local street scene. I mean, the land's already developed. For me, it doesn't. It doesn't make any difference to me personally whether it's the reuse of the buildings or they're rebuilt. They're still going to become houses either way. And if it means that we get more housing, different housing, we're meant to have all types, sizes, and styles of housing, not just housing estates. So. For me, I'm happy with this application. So I still propose we approve it under policy D1.
Councillor Morgan.
Yes, I just want to add that, Councillor Stevens rightly pointed out the clause, the proposed development by reasons of its location be disconnected from services and facilities and would provide poor quality and limited access to public transportation. I think we've got to be realistic here. The sort of people who's going to be living in this development probably that's not really going to be a consideration. So I think we need to consider the nature of the use the building's going to be
which
put to.
is something we often face in the rural areas. Councillor White, one last go.
Yeah, thank you. If I come back, it just says all development must respect and enhance the character and local context to make a positive contribution in terms of architectural style, use of materials, detailed design features and construction methods, innovative design, blah, 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 height, size, scale, form, massing and proportion, landscape setting, layer orientation. So for me, we've already got buildings on this site and I think it does conform with policy D1. So I'm still happy to stand by that for the reasons I've just given.
Okay, so we have a proposal to approve, seconded by Councillor Morgan. In the absence of an alternative proposal, we'll put that to the vote. Those in favour of Councillor White's proposal? That's 3. Against? 1 abstention. So that is passed. Thank you very much, members. Oh, could somebody retrieve Councillor Thompson, please? Is she coming? Yeah. Okay. It's you again, Hayley, is it? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Here she comes. Mine was white, no sugar, Councillor Thompson, but don't worry about it. Nothing. No, a feeble attempt at a quip. Don't to fill in the time while you sat. No, thank you. Okay, members, so let's crack on. September Barn, Chelmsford Road, Purleigh. This is a call in by Councillor Miss White. Hayley, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is planning permission is sought for the erection of a single-storey rear extension, which would measure 5.5 metres in depth, 4.1 metres in width, and has a maximum height of 4.7 metres. The current submission poses no change to the previously refused application, which was 22/00969 house. This is the location plan. This is the existing and the proposed block plans. These are the existing elevations. These are the existing floor plans. The proposed elevations. The proposed floor plans. These are some site photos. We also have an aerial view of the site showing the property. This is the property here. And we also have an aerial view where we've added the area of the garden as it currently stands, as the reduction in the amenity space for the property formed one of the reasons for refusal on the previous application and subsequently for this application too.
Okay, that was it. Short and sweet. Thank you very much. Indeed. Have we any public speakers on this? Yes.
Yep.
Who do we have speaking for this?
Hi, Chair. We have Mr. Ben Strathman, the applicant.
Oh, right. Mr. Stratham, come forward.
Oops. I was reading the wrong map.
All right. Yeah, either anyone with a microphone, you heard with the previous, you will get 2 minutes from when you start to speak. And press the button if you could, so that the microphone lights up.
Good evening. We'd like you to consider the following points regarding our planning application. Our growing daughter will need an appropriate sized bedroom. She's currently in a cot in our second bedroom, which at best is a box room. The room will be too small for a single bed, wardrobe, chest of drawers. This small second bedroom could then become my study. It is not the size to be a child's bedroom, therefore September Barn would remain a 2-bedroom property. We have a large well-used garden to the front of the property, approximately 275 square metres, which will be screened more and more as the hedges grow, making it into a beautiful private space. An additional rear garden of 74 square metres remains generous for our use and any further future owners. The extension would be built using the same materials as the original barn, making it an attractive addition. We would use feather edge and reclaimed tiles. The extension would not be seen from the Chelmsford Road, east or west. We really hope you can support us, Elizabeth Strafford, Benson Fern and my daughter Polly. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. Members, Councillor White, you called this in, so...
I did indeed call this in, and I can tell you from delivering leaflets, they've all got very long driveways and big gardens. I actually, this one was one that was approved originally under Class Q, and there was a bit of an issue with it. Anyway, it ended up coming to us and we approved it at committee. I don't recall seeing this application, so I can only think that it must have been delegated. It's not actually saying how it was done on the website for some bizarre reason. And for me, it's a family. They're having more children. I think it makes perfect sense. When you read the report under section 5.3, impact on residential amenity, it says that it would be located 5 metres away from the neighbouring property. Well, they're all family properties. It's all on the farm. And having an untidy farm ourselves, I can assure you that it's not going to do any harm to the neighbouring land or area around it. And in fact, it will tidy everything up. So for me, I think we should support this application. It's allowing a family with historical connections to stay in the area and house their growing family. So I propose we approve this application under D1 and because it will protect the amenity of its surrounding. So for me, it's a perfectly acceptable design. Thank you.
Okay, well, we've gone straight in with a proposal, but Mr. Johnson, you want to comment?
Unless any other councillor had a comment to make.
Well, I'm sure they will, but I thought you were going to respond to Councillor White.
It's going to be a fairly lengthy.
Okay, all right. Oh dear. Okay, Councillor Mrs. Thompson, yes.
I seem to recall we turned down or attempted to turn down a whole garden suburb because there was one garden about 10% too small. No, I'm sorry, front gardens don't count as amenity space. I know we have a slightly wacky planning system, but it is what it is. And we're just saying 75% of a sufficient back garden is sufficient. And I can't agree, sorry.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Chair. I just really questioned, really. I was looking at clause 5.2.7. It says, currently proposed development due to the size, height and position of the extension proposed resulted in an incongruous dominant extension to the property, which will be visually prominent within the street scene. Can you please just, perhaps one of the officers, demonstrate how that's going to happen?
Apologies, there's not, it's not an application or report that we are overly familiar with, and I've stepped in last minute, so I can't fully comment on that part of it.
I mean, the application site is to the rear of the building, the other side from the street, am I right?
What I would say is that this is an identical to a previously refused application. The reason for refusal one is a carryover. Yeah.
Sorry, could you perhaps be a bit clearer?
Reason for refusal one in its entirety. But I think what I was going to go on to say, and I will do, Councillor, once you've finished, is to then go on to talk about how that relates to reason for refusal two, which I think is the most substantive reason for refusal.
Well,
please come back. Yeah.
Please do.
Councillor Morley would like to come in first.
Yes, could you go back to the photograph that you had, that you blanked out the garden or amenity area? So you can't actually see that from the road anyway, and yeah, okay, thank you.
Right, I think Mr. Johnson, it's over to you if you're going to.
Thank you, thank
fill
you,
us all
Chairman.
in.
To be honest, there is no objection to the principle of an extension to the property in the rear. The extension is fundamentally in terms of its size and its impact on the rear garden. And I'll just draw members' attention to 5.5 of the report, where it does tend to go into a fair bit of detail about the nature of the resultant garden, should this application be approved, well, as a result of the proposal, in terms of the regularity of the space and the potential usability of the space in its general sense. But what it also does, so it sets out that, you know, the what would be left would be 74 square meters of floor space. Now that's 26% less than our standard for a property of this size. Just jump into, let's see, 5.5.7. There was an application in July 2020, Central Area Planning Committee, where a garden was, that happened to be one of my earlier committees when I came to the council, I must add. That garden was reduced from 94 square meters to 59.7. That was equally a family that had connections to the local area, etc. And it was refused for the sole reason of the garden space. Now, what I will draw out there is that the garden space on that scheme, which was refused, was of a regular, standard sort of, you know, square shape. Yeah, it had distance to the rear garden, etc. But there was the intrusion because of the extension of it. But the resultant space was a regular space. What we're drawing out here is that, and if we go back to, 5.2, or beginning from 5.2.2, says the existing garden space is 99 square meters. And as a result of the extension, it will be reduced to 74 square meters, which is significantly below. It's 26 square meters below. But then 5.5.3 talks about the usability of the amenity space due to the shape of the remaining space of the garden. The interjection of the extension to the garden would result in a compartmentalized garden area. So you've just got sections. With the larger section, and you know, go into a fair bit of detail here in terms of the dimensions, 7.3 meters in width with a staggered depth of between 5.6 and 7.6. So this gives a single regular shape of approximately 51.6 square meters. So the regular shape of the garden is almost half the size of the existing garden. The remaining space, which then makes up the additional area to bring up to 74, again is set out here. So we're talking about, for example, from the rear of the proposed extension to the rear garden would be 2 meters. We're talking about from the side of the extension to the adjoining boundary to the east is again about 2 meters. So really, when you're looking at the regular space of what is a garden, and this is how we've made decisions in the past. So again, I'm bringing to members' attention consistency of how we've approached these things. You're looking really at only an area of 51 square meters. Additional area which has been added into that also is to the east of the property, along the side where to the west, just up along the side there. So this is an irregular space. This is not what the policy seeks to protect and to provide in terms of amenity space. So that's the thrust of the council's garden argument. And we've made decisions on and refused schemes for a lesser amount of reduction of garden space, which have a regular size. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a couple of people indicated. Did we say that the garden is 99 square metres? Current? Still not huge, is it? I mean, it's only
Yes, that's right.
30 foot by 30 foot, and if it's going, broadly speaking, and it's going down to 74, I mean, they're both pretty small spaces anyway, but Councillor White indicated, but I'm going to go to Councillor Stevens first. Okay, that's fine. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask about the front garden? Because it looks very large to me. Okay, most houses, the garden is at the back, but my main garden is at the side. At the back, I've got a little courtyard, which I'm certain isn't whatever that size was we just heard. And the garden being at the side is fine. It's not like it's down the road. It's just on a different side of the house than you might expect. It looks to me like there is a large front garden. It's connected to the house directly and could readily be enclosed to make it a safe family space. So I'm interested in that. The other reason for objection is relating to the design of the extension. I think it's not too bad. It looks the same as the one at the front. It's got a hipped bit at the end, so it's not quite so as aggressive as it might be. It's not overlooked. I can't really say that I agree with it being, unsympathetic addition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chairman. Do you not distinguish between a private house and a farm where children have basically the farm to play on as well as an amenity space? I know my children hardly ever played in the garden. We had a small garden.
Well, yes, we do. I mean, this is to all intents and purposes a dwelling house. It's not a farm. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor White, and then Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right, now I've actually gone into the Central Area Planning Committee, and it was Wentworth Meadows that was refused. And that's an absolutely totally different application. For me, it looked like a bit of an incongruous design. All the other houses ran linear front and back on the road, and this was kind of squashed in the middle of houses that went back to back. And it not only had a rear extension, it also had a side extension. It was a house in the middle of a housing estate that had the two-storey projection was 5.3 metres or 5.6 metres, and the rear extension was 5.6 by 2.5. And a ridge height of 7.4 metres. And for me, if you go onto the site of this development, the cars are located in a fenced and gated car park, and all of the children, I've never been round the back, but I know from when I was leafleting, all the children's toys are on the road side. That is where the children play. What size is that front garden? Because if that's where the children's toys are, and I know for a fact I saw that because I handed out the leaflets, that must be what they're using for their main garden, and as I say, the cars are blocked off. I couldn't actually find a way to get in there, so I don't know where I shoved the leaflet in the end. But I mean, for me, I think it is sympathetic design, and I don't think there is. I think there's perfectly adequate garden space, and it certainly hasn't got any bearing whatsoever on the Wentworth Meadows ones or Wentworth Gardens. Thank you.
Right, Mr. Johnson has his finger poised. Go on then, Mr.
So, thank you, Chair. I mean, our policies are based on what your traditional garden is, which is your rear garden. We have to make clear differentiation between the front of properties and the rear of properties. There are exceptional cases, and there may be cases because the property may have been converted from a previous use where you may have a larger front garden. But we have to be clear in our application of the policies what we apply to. Otherwise, we'll lead to wide inconsistency in how this is applying. The messages that goes out to the general public in terms of what they can apply for and what they would get supported would be completely inconsistent and not necessarily in conformity. The local authority could be tied up in terms of its own decisions, especially if they then went against a decision in a circumstance that was inconsistent with the decision they made previously on appeal, where these cases would be cited. Our modern design guide does not make reference to the front gardens. They talk about front gardens as semi-public spaces, as most front gardens are, and that's it. The policies for gardens relates to the rear, and I think we need to be clear about that. And if members want to overturn or vote to overturn officer's recommendation, they need to be clear in any minutes what are the particular circumstances of this site that would make it different, because we could be again setting a dangerous precedent. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, I'm going to come in there because I'm afraid we're not comparing apples with apples, are we? We're talking about a previously used agricultural site, not an urban housing estate where traditional gardens are at the back and the one at the front is a little bit of a patch or a parking space. So I'm sorry, I don't tend to agree, and I think there's another element here. You know, we're balancing garden space with living space, aren't we? And what is deemed to be more important. But Councillor Morgan, I think you indicated.
Oh, well, I did, but I think you've sort of stolen my thunder largely, Mr.
Sorry.
Chairman. I mean, and I follow with Councillor Stevens' view. I realise that the officer has to point out the possibility of creating a precedent, and I understand that's his job. But as you quite rightly say, common sense must prevail. This is not a terraced house in Malden. It's on a farm. It's a very large, bigger sort of garden than I've got out the front, and plenty of room. So and the developments behind the roof line from the away from the road. I mean, I say what. I just feel really sorry for the officer that had to go out and make all those detailed measurements of the garden to be able for Mr. Johnson to be so precise about them. I really don't think they're germane.
Well, yes, and I also appeal to not only this owner but others similar on the light of Councillor White's comments, looking for somewhere to post leaflets. Particularly if they have a drive, they should be made to have post boxes at the end of their drive. Speaking of somebody with a largely rural patch with quarter-mile long drives, and they then put a post box next to their front door. But yes, yeah. Okay, Mr. Johnson.
I think my last point to which you then made a comment actually alluded to the fact that just members need to be clear on the basis on which a decision may be making to this. You've elaborated on that in terms of your discussion there about the peculiarities of this site. I wouldn't quite go with what Councillor Morgan said in terms of common sense, but we need to talk about it in terms of what do we think are the material considerations in terms of this particular site. So that's the language in which we can understand, which we can then say, okay, well, there were material circumstances in this particular case, and excuse me, Councillor Morgan, in saying this, but you know, rather than common sense, because that's the parlance we use in terms of our planning deliberations. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, like I said, let's compare apples with apples, not apples with pears, because it's quite different. Now, we have a proposal, unless you want to add to it, Councillor White. I do want to move on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd like to propose the approval of this application. It's a development that fits well within the landscape. The design and character are commensurate with the existing buildings and materials that are in use, and it allows a family to remain in the existing. There's no harm to the landscape or the street scene because it cannot be seen from the road. So for those reasons, I would support approving this application if I have a seconder again.
And that's seconded by Councillor Morley. So in the absence of an alternative proposal, those in favour? Oh, yes, Mr. Johnson.
Just to add to that before we go to decision, I think we just need to talk also about the material circumstances of this particular application, in which there's justifiable means to not follow the actual standard policy. But that can be justification enough, but I think that needs to be limited.
I think actually, Mr. Johnson, we've probably done that in relation to the relationship between the front and the rear garden on this particular property.
Yeah, and if I might come back on the local knowledge, I know from driving in the local area, the applicants 100% use the garden to the front as their amenity space because there are toys parked outside the door.
And a nice new postbox, hopefully. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. I think for the sake of the minutes then that we should be recording that the material difference here is that the front garden is on its own, it's sufficient amenity space. So we're not saying, oh, if you add a bit of the front and a bit of the back and a bit of Auntie so-and-so's down the road, I can make a garden. It is completely enough space on its own, and it is capable of being made into a private, secure amenity space. I think if we make those comments, we're safeguarding against everybody saying, oh, I'll add a couple of metres of my front garden to it. Thank you.
And it is in a rural setting. Okay, thank you. So that is a proposal by Councillor White, seconded by Councillor Morland. Please indicate if you are in agreement. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against? 1 and 1 abstention. That is passed. Thank you very much. And one more to go, I think. On the right page. I do struggle with this new machine slightly. Fingers and thumbs. Who's taking us through the next one?
Back to me.
Mrs. Hannah, it's you again now. Yeah, ready. Yeah, ready. Yeah.
Thank you. So this is an application for the erection of a stable block. Oh, wrong way. So this is the application site. You may be familiar with the site because we've had applications brought forward to the committee previously. For the most recent one was for a dwelling in a similar red line area that was previously refused. And then some within the further blue line, which is the ownership of the applicant. So there's an existing sheds or stable building within the application site which would be removed, and to the north here is an existing barn and stable building that has 2 stables within it. So this is the block plan. So this is the proposed stables, the proposed elevations, and then this is showing just the internal elevations. You can see that a bit better. The proposed floor plan, so 4 stables, hay, straw and straw store, tack room, equipment store and feed room. Some photos of the site, so you can just see the existing stable building to the back, and this is the building that would be demolished to make way for the new proposal. Views across the site and of the access points. Location of the proposed access, and then access from Broad Street Green Road, which is shared with a commercial premises. So the development, if we go back to the elevation plans, is considered to have a domestic appearance and be large in scale and bulk. Whilst the other applications at the site have been for residential, it's worth noting that the inspector placed emphasis on the site having an open character and a connection truly open to the countryside. So there are concerns at the fact that this would have a residential appearance and an urbanising impact on the site, and that there hasn't been a justified need for the proposal demonstrated as part of the application. This application is therefore recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Are there public speakers?
Yep.
Thank you. Is the applicant or agent?
Yes, Chair. We have Melanie Bingham-Wallace on behalf of she's the agent on behalf of the applicant, and she's on Teams here.
Okay, thank you very much. So, welcome. As you would be in the chamber, you will have 2 minutes. Can you see the clock?
No, I'm afraid I can't.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Can you see it now? It's all I can see now, but can you see the clock? Can you?
I'm afraid not.
No. Okay.
I
Well,
have time.
well, I'll give you a sort of a countdown then. But you have 2 minutes from when you start talking. So whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening. The applicants wish to maintain their long-term support for the donkey sanctuary by rehoming rescue donkeys to add to their existing herd. In order to do so, the applicant needs to be able to demonstrate suitable and appropriate accommodation before rehoming process can commence. The report notes that a justifiable and functional need for the proposed development has not been demonstrated. There are concerns in the scale, bulk and design which would result in a large domestic building. The building has been designed for its functional requirements. There are minimum requirements for stable space to be provided for the donkey welfare. The donkeys will be supplementary fed with hay and feed. There needs to be dry and secure storage of this within the building. To minimise deliveries, the allocated area needs to be of an adequate size to hold a good supply. The keeping of these animals entails storage of other bulky equipment and specialist equine equipment. It is presented that the building cannot be smaller in bulk. Concerns are raised that the building has a residential appearance due to the presence of windows. These are openings to allow ventilation through the hay and straw stores and the stables. The tack and hand washing areas require natural light as a connection to electricity is not proposed as part of this application. The height of the building is reduced and limited to 3.7 metres. The actual floor layout is commensurate with a standard stable. Under policy E4, the keeping of donkeys cannot be reasonably located in towns or villages. The proposal is directly linked to an existing use. The report notes that there are stable facilities on site under a previous application, but the current stable provision is inadequate for the accommodation of the additional donkeys the applicant seeks to rehome. The proposed tiling is chosen to match the roof of the existing barn. The windows take the form of openings rather than glazed units. The U-shape reduces the bulk of the building, which is considerably
10 seconds.
smaller than the approved barn, with a ridge height of 7 metres and a width of 15 metres. It is contested that the building will have a residential appearance or will significantly harm the rural character of the location.
Okay, I gave you a couple of seconds grace because you couldn't see the clock, but you did very well. Thank you very much indeed. This was called in by Councillor Keyes, who's no longer with us. I don't mean he's departed this earth, but he is no longer a member of this authority. So members, open to any comments, questions. Councillor Miss White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was actually looking on the donkey sanctuary thing to work out what they were coming from with the rehoming requirements, but I've obviously missed it somewhere. How many hectares is the site? I can't find that. While you're looking for that, I've actually looked down, and two of the stables are 3.2.5 metres, but and two are 3.3.3 by 3.5. But I have to say that 3.5 metres by 3.5 metres is considered sufficient for a 17-hand horse. A donkey is usually about 13 hands, so 17 hands would be about 6'6" and 13.2 would be about my elbow height. I'm not very good on where the sizes are on ponies. All I know is they're small. So I don't actually have a problem with the size of the stables, and I'm actually, when I'm on the Donkey Sanctuary website, it says that they need approximately 4.7 square metres of covered area for their bedded area. Well, I think 3 by 2.4 is bigger than 4.7, so that's that one. They've got other heights on the doors. I think they meet the door requirements. So really for me, it's just, do they have enough grazing? Well, I'm flicking through the requirements for the donkey sanctuary.
Right, okay. I'm rather hoping that there's nobody living nearby because they're the most obnoxious sounding animals in the world. They make a terrible row. Having had one for several years, Councillor Morgan, you were first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm looking at clause 3.2, the conclusion, 3.2.1 in fact. And says it has not been demonstrated that there's a justifiable and functional need for the proposed development, which I'm puzzled by. Is there a suggestion amongst the officers that giving sanctuary to donkeys is not a justifiable and functional fact? That's question sort of one. And the second is, there's constant reference to its residential appearance. And are we just coming out with it and saying that there's a suspicion that this is some form of, railroad through a residential development in the countryside? Thank you.
I think that's probably where this has come from, Councillor Morgan. Having had a stable not too far away from where I live that very quickly appeared with curtains at the windows. I
think you'll find the donkeys will eat those curtains.
Suspicious. And they actually got that on a certificate of lawfulness after about 15 years. But anyway, Councillor Mrs. Thompson, did you?
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, sorry, talking in old money, what's 3 by 2.5 metres is what, 10 by 8?
Yeah,
that does
like
sound small even to me. I have to confess, I wouldn't put a 17.2 in a 12 by 12 stable or 12 by 14. Well, maybe 12 by 14, unless it was working really hard. But my understanding of having friends with donkey sanctuary donkeys is they need permanent access to walk in and out anyway. So otherwise you have to have a field shelter, I think. I'm more concerned about the urbanisation because it isn't so long ago that we had a member, and that application was approved, arguing in Moat Lane in Wickham Bishops that stables were not what you expect to see in the countryside and a house would be a huge improvement. And that application was in fact approved by this committee at that time. Stables are generally held to be domestic, which is, it seems slightly bizarre to me, but that's how planning works. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Yes, I'm just picking up Councillor Thompson's point about urbanisation. I believe this property is not very far away from Broad Street Green Garden Village, so I rather wonder why anyone should make a specific statement that this is increasing the urbanisation of the area. Thank you. Perhaps the officers could explain.
Perhaps the residents of Westcombe Park then will enjoy the serenading by donkeys. You can come back, Mrs. Thompson. Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman. Sorry, Councillor Morgan's comment. I mean, I think that's the idea, that we keep the urban areas within the allocated sites and try and keep the rest as rural as we can, rather than mix and match the whole lot. That's my understanding.
Well, we're going backwards and forwards, members, so we're not looking for a proposal one way or the other. If anybody's going to put their head above the parapet, Councillor Miss White, you're usually good for a proposal.
Well, I like donkeys, and I really like donkeys, so I'm prepared to propose this because I think that donkeys should be in the countryside. There is a sort of ramshackle building there. Did we ever find out how many hectares of land they have? It looks quite big on there. So as long as there's sufficient grazing, I'm happy to propose this because it is a suitable building for the countryside. Thank you.
Do we know that, ladies?
I don't know the exact area off the top of my head, but paragraph 5.5.1 of the officer's report sets out the minimum requirements for grazing land and on assessing the application. So it's a minimum of, you might have already said this, apologies if you have, is 0.2 to 0.4 hectares of grazing land, and taking into account the paddock area, then there's sufficient space. The officers don't actually have concerns in relation to the donkey welfare on the site.
Okay, so that sounds like a proposal then, Councillor White.
Absolutely, yeah.
And is that duly seconded? Oh, you please do, yes.
Yeah, there's reference in the report to the need for this, but if somebody came forward and said, "Oh, I want to build an extension on my house," we don't ask them to prove that they've got enough people to occupy the extension or what they're going to do with it. It's either compliant or not. So there's something in here about, oh well, it's big enough for 4 donkeys and they've only got 2 in mind, and then there's not any need. Can I explore that a bit? Why does somebody have to, or does somebody have to prove that they've got enough donkeys? Thank you.
So policy E4 supports agricultural and rural diversification, and that policy sets out the requirements that there needs to be a justifiable and functional need. The point in relation to the need in relation to this application is, I think we could perhaps accept there is a need for 2 stables to house the 2 additional donkeys, but there is already provision within the site. There is already 2 stables within the building to the north, so it's that combined with the concern of the scale and bulk that there isn't a justified need for a building of that size, and then that contributes to the character harm. If I'm making sense. Michael?
No, I just wanted to just raise a point about the windows, and in terms of the sort of domestic appearance. And I will say I'm no expert in terms of stables and stables for donkeys and that sort of thing, but when you have a look at the building and you see what looks like residential windows, is that quite normal to have residential windows for stables? I mean, the windows seem to have glazing bars, you know, in a sort of regular appearance. I mean, is that pretty standard for a stable building? I'm also looking at the application form in terms of the materials. The application form makes no reference to glass. It talks about timber. Now, if we it sounds like there's a bit of a inconsistency in terms, if you juxtapose the materials that are set out in the application form and what's on the drawings. This is just throwing it out to members in terms of considerations. Either way, the vote might go. If it went against officers' recommendations, then we have to be considering materials. I think, and given the arguments that I hear being made by members, I think we need to be considering the appearance, the fact that they are to all intents and purposes windows. To which that's part of the concern which officers are raising, the domestication. Is that pretty standard? In my view, my limited understanding, that is not pretty standard. Once the windows are in there, in that regular pattern, we've got them to the front, we've got them to the rear, we've got what looks like doors. Yep. I mean, you know, officers in their experience are familiar with these as layouts, even for where residential dwellings come forward with this sort of horseshoe arrangement. So these are also part of the concerns that we have in terms of the design, what is its intended purposes. So this is points I wanted to just raise out to members. Thank you.
I think, Mr. Johnson, we all understand the concerns, and I'm not an expert, but I don't think that you have open, unglazed windows in stables, because the old wind in the winter will whistle through. Surely you must have a means of closing it. Councillor Thompson, I think you're probably more of an expert than I.
I suspect so, but Councillor White and I both have qualifications as riding instructors. And to be fair, that's a pretty standard stable. And
yeah,
the windows on mine would be bigger, and they are prefab stables. They're, you know, kind of fairly bog standard stables. Equines of all kinds need very high levels of ventilation. You know, they never evolved to live in houses, and even in a barn or a feed room or whatever, you do need to be able to see what you're doing. So my objections, I mean, I agree with most of the officer recommendation, but not actually that part. I just think it's a large building that I'd rather see tucked away.
Councillor Morgan, I think, yeah.
The windows are fair enough, I think.
Yeah, they're not huge either, are they?
I just follow up on that. I mean, you do have windows in buildings of that nature. I mean, they can't be sort of shrouded in darkness. I just wonder perhaps whether there may be a room for some form of condition to be placed upon the development, making that it can only be used for the stabling of equines. Are donkeys
I'm
equines?
sure we can, but whether that, I think we just need. I think we just need to be mindful on the internal fitting, etc. That is conditioned so that it is quite clearly for noisy old donkeys.
Yeah, I think that's fine. We can impose a condition, and that would be a standard for any stables application. But I think the concern is the scale, bulk, and design of the building. And just to add to your point earlier, Councillor, about the North Haybridge Garden suburb, one of the inspectors, considering previous development at this site, and I appreciate it was residential, did actually say that the provision of the garden suburb actually made this area of land more important, and its openness and rural aspect, because you do have all that urban development to the south. So just a point of note there.
Members, I don't think the officer's concerns or fears are unreasonable, given that there's previously a refused application for a domestic dwelling on this site. So we forgive them for that. But so we have a proposal. Are you indicating seconded?
Yep.
So we have a seconded proposal in the name of Councillor Miss White to approve this. Could you show those in favour, please? 3 in favour, those against, 2 and 1 abstention. So that is passed.
Is that standard conditions in consultation
Standard
with yourselves?
conditions to ensure that it is.
Yeah, and ensure that they are horse or donkey safe windows.
And obviously we'll tighten up on material.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't think donkeys climb out the windows very much, do they? But they certainly need to be soundproof.
That would be a real party trick.
No, thank you very much indeed. I've gone through my script. Any other items of business that the chairman decides are urgent? I have none. So I close this meeting. Thank you for your contributions. It's been really very pleasurable. So the meeting is brought to a close. Just missed the 9 o'clock target. As the meeting is now closed, please, members, you're advised not to enter into any further discussions when you leave this meeting. And see you next time. Thank you very much.